God desires to meet all of us where we are, even in those places of resistance.
You know what? Your journey through struggling through the pandemic changed your life and so many other people. We were talking about that a little bit before, we started to record. What happened to you and how has God moved you through that change in your life?
Well, about, I would say 3 years before the pandemic, I had already come to a place where I had given God an unequivocal yes. And what I mean by that is, when you've been in church your entire life and, you've gone through the motions and you've served and you've done everything that you thought that you were supposed to do, it doesn't necessarily mean that you surrendered your life to God. And I realized around that time that I wasn't surrendered because the big question that I had as a believer who had then divorced was how? How did this happen? Because God, I know I want to serve you. God, I know that we both were committed. How did this happen? And I really began to take inventory of my life and realize that I was not surrendered. It was about my plans and my way and what I wanted to do. And I feel that a lot of folks, but I'm going to try and focus on myself, when you give your life to Christ, is not really about, okay, God, I'm coming, here's my life, and here's what I thought I was going to do, and here's what I believed I wanted. But if you want something else from me, I'm willing to receive that. And I'm opening up myself up to walk the path that you have for me. Many of us, however, go toward him and say, God, listen, okay, now that I'm surrendering myself to you, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. And if I do everything you want, then you're going to bless it. And God did not promise that. And once I began to see that that's what I was doing, this kind of quid pro quo thing with God, in the same way that I was interacting with other people, I said, God, I'm now going to give you my unequivocal yes. And whatever you want to do, I want you to do it. The one thing, however, I had not given him was my career. Because how in the world, once you're moving and shaking and you're on that hamster wheel, how do you jump off when you have a mortgage and you have this and you have so many responsibilities? How do you do that?
How
And the
do you?
yeah, yeah. Well, the pandemic brought it about because one of the things that was in the back of my mind was, usually when there's a tragedy in your personal life, the world keeps going. You have to stop, but the world keeps going. And if there's a tragedy in the world, let's say globally, that area of the world may stop, but you keep on going. However, during this time, everything stopped. And I just had this thought in the back of my mind that now is the time to get off the ride concerning my career without getting bumped and scraped and bruised. Usually, like if you're in a car and it's still moving, you got to tuck and roll so that you don't
Yes.
get killed when you jump out the moving car. Well, I had this feeling, okay, no, I can step off the ride and it'll be okay because in that season, God made provision for everybody. Whether it
Mhm.
was a small business, you're unemployed, whatever it was, God made provision for you, food, money, whatever. So I really took that opportunity to say, okay, there's this paid pandemic sick leave, which a lot of people know about. I have my daughter at home. Even if you could work at home and made a provision for you to still work, to still stay at home and collect that sick leave and not have to go into work, even virtually. So I claimed that. And that was during the time that I started to put together that little journal and that devotional that I carried around for 3 years and made the original From the Word.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, how did you handle being a single mom with a learning disabled daughter in the midst of this pandemic?
Well, the unfortunate thing was I didn't know that she had any type of learning disability. I was a mother that was a communications manager for the city of New York. And I really felt like she was in a great school, a blue ribbon school. She was progressing along. So I had no idea that she had any difficulties until now. I'm at home trying to quote unquote, homeschool her as I'm some kind of teacher because one of her teachers in the classroom is now going out on maternity leave. So I now have the added pressure of working and trying to teach her. And I was just like, listen, what's happening? Why isn't she like catching on? And then I find out from the administration, well, there's a little bit of a learning disability. And we did do the testing. And well, when was somebody going to tell me that this is something I was dealing with? And this was in addition to the ADHD. So I'm grateful that all this happened so that I can come to the awareness that as a parent, we are required to have our hands on our kids. I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care how successful you think you may be. You must have your hands on your kids because sometimes the schools are not going to tell you what's going on. Sometimes the kids are not going to tell you because they don't even know. It's not unless you're up close and personal that you can really see what's going on with them, not just academically, but emotionally, psychologically,
Absolutely.
what's happening with your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and you also have to know, and I'm just going to throw this in here quickly. You got to know what they're teaching them too, because a
Yes.
lot of parents just like, they hand their kid over and they say, well, you take care of their learning and their teaching. And meanwhile, you don't even know what they're reading. You don't even understand it. So I give you a lot of credit for, stepping up and just saying this and taking part in your daughter's life because basically God gives us children and as a gift, they
Yeah.
are not to be just handled like you hear everybody else goes and I'm just going to watch this kid grow up and do the best I can. This is a gift that's given to you and you
Yeah.
take full credit for that for God. So my next question would be so why did you leave that six-figure career and how did it change your life? Like, what are you doing now after you left it?
Well, my main reason for leaving was to take care of her because before the pandemic, there were five people that were involved with the care of my daughter. From her father, we had an after school person. We also had another person that watched in the week. So it was five people that were involved. And after the pandemic, it was just me. That was
Yeah.
number one. But number two, I think it's important to know that when it comes to my daughter and trying to be there for her, I really just thought about, okay, if I'm making the money, then that is taking care of her. Because in my family, we had a history of pathology of people not taking care of the kids, specifically mothers not taking care of their kids. So my daughter's children was raised by my mother. My mother was raised by her aunt. So people didn't take care of their own kids. And one of the things that was said to me once the pandemic started by a family member in South Carolina was just send Kaya down here and then we'll take care of her down here so you can work. And I was just like, no, I'm not letting my child go. So I was just really determined that I was going to hold on to her because I said, no matter what, I waited 12 years and a half while I was married because I wanted to make sure I could be there for her. And now that they were telling us that we had to come back into the office in New York City, they weren't providing any remote options. It was either I could be there and work the shift and then get back home to get her, or I would have to leave. And I ultimately had to leave because once we exhausted all options and there were no accommodations, I had to leave my career. So, once you quit in the city of New York, then even the state of New York, you're not really guaranteed any type of unemployment benefits because you quit. However, there is an exception clause within that law that says if you quit for cause, then they can grant the unemployment. Although they initially denied it, they within a few weeks overturned it. So God allowed me to get that. And then because that was denied, I was able to get benefits at least temporarily because I didn't have any income coming in other than what I had for savings. And then going into October of that year, which was 5 months later, I found an opening within another city agency that did offer a hybrid remote schedule on a part-time basis because it was considered non-mayoral. So it was in the same thing that I did, same communications, everything else, hybrid remote, parking space, and all that got worked out so that I could continue to regain my tier in the city and still have income coming in that way. And then at the time that I left the city, the journal that I'd been carrying for 3 years, that I was throughout that time just organizing, because when you're trying to now adjust to not having that income, you have to downsize. You have to be strategic about how you're going to do money. So I had to sell my car. I bought a new car outright, just that was used. Just cut a lot of different expenses that we had. And then that journal that I've been carrying out, organized it because as I was talking to like Geico and all these different places, the first thing I would ask people is, so how are you doing? And when I ask that question from folks, I wait for an answer. So I had people giving me like 30-minute answers. Oh, I have so much anxiety. I had one person say, I don't even want to go outside with my kids, because I'm just so afraid with everything that's going on. And when they would finish, I would say, well, can I make a suggestion? And they say, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. I said, well, can I make the suggestion that instead of saying my anxiety, you say I'm overcoming anxiety? Because when you say that, you're not denying it. You're not in la la land acting like it doesn't exist, but you are speaking to where you want to go. And then I also offered to give them a couple of scriptures that they could say when they feel those ancient feelings. So as I was doing all this, once I would get to the point of having to give the scriptures, it would take me some time because in my little book, the scriptures are all over the place. I never intended to like give anybody scriptures out of my notebook. So the Holy Spirit began to talk to me about organizing it. And once it was all organized and put together, I ended up with a topical ultra concordance that had over 80 different topics that I felt were some of the most critical topics in a believer's life. That had all the scriptures, affirmations, some prayers, and also some reflections on some key topics, which was our original Affirm the Word book. So
Mhm.
between the Affirm the Word book, which became the company, part-time employment, that's how we've been surviving.
So that brings me to the point where you begin this journal
Hmm.
and your passion is to see women engage in intentional journaling, right? So I love that you quote Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision and make it plain on tablets that he may run who reads it. And so, I constantly speak to women about this. I'm telling them all the time, you've got to journal what you're feeling because you have to see how God grows you throughout your life and how where you came from being maybe a believer in milk. Now you're really getting into the word and he's really teaching you. So you wrote the book Affirm the Word. And how does it help strengthen a woman's faith?
Well, our new 52-week prayer journal for women, I felt is crucial because what this particular journal does is it combined that original Affirm the Word book, the whole concept, with 52 weeks worth of devotionals, some reflection sections, as well as the affirmation sections, because I feel like, yes, journaling is important, and I call that basic journaling. But in order to really see change and transformation happen in one's life, I personally feel that you have to take that a step higher and engage in intentional journaling. And intentional journaling just allows you to take all of the life-giving thoughts that God has told you about yourself, the word that he's placed on your heart, and separate those from the other thoughts that says, listen, I don't know how I'm going to make it. How am I going to get out of here? This is a mess. If it ain't one thing, is enough. Because those things are happening too. Let's be real. It allows you to separate those life-giving thoughts from those thoughts and put them to paper and then lay them before God and say, God, how is it that you want me to proceed in this? You're telling me that I'm going in this direction. You're telling me that this is how you see me. How do you want me to proceed in this area? And as God begins to speak to you, you write that down. And then you go back to and you hold yourself accountable. Instead of just writing out, today was a horrible day. I didn't like my boss. My coffee was spoiled. No, let's go beyond that. Because until you get really intentional about what God is saying to you and about you, and then what he's telling you to do about that, you're not going to see much change in your life. Being able to experience change and allow God to manifest his presence in and through you requires surrender, yes. But once God gives you the word, you need to write that down and keep on referencing it because, again, all those other things are still there and they're prevalent, they're relentless, and they're constantly speaking to this ain't gonna work. You ain't going nowhere. You tried that before and you failed. You need to go back and see, okay, no, all that may be something that took place, but this is what God said, and this is what I'm standing on, and this is what I'm affirming. Because you also have to speak this over your life every day. That's those thoughts don't just go away and you say, get out of here. I don't want you to talk to me anymore. No, you got to speak something else in its place so that that can get rooted deep down within you and you can begin to walk with that as your everyday experience.
Yeah. Well, do you have any people that have come back to you that have said, this is so amazing and I'm really learning so much about myself? Give me a good story.
I will give you the best one ever. Okay, so when I started Affirm the Word, because I don't know what God is going to do with all this. I had no idea we would have a company in that the first prayer journal would be a 2021 Amazon new release. I had no idea any of this would happen, but I said I do have a responsibility to make sure I've laid a proper foundation. That we have a bank account, that we have our URL, that we have all these things in place. And coming from a background in communications, thank God I understand how to do that. So I contacted this local bank, which with the credit union. We set up the account and everything else. And at the time, because of COVID, everything was virtual, just like this on Zoom. And the account manager I spoke with said, listen, when this comes out, please send me a link because I want to buy this for someone. And at that time, we only had two books. We only had the original Affirm the Word white book and a journal. And sometimes we would sell it as a bundle. So within maybe 3 months after setting up this account, this woman calls me. And at the time that, people still had access to me, it was like just so new. And so she called me. She says, hi, I'm so and so and so. And this person bought your book for me. And it was the account manager from the bank. And she said, I just want to thank you so much for this book because I was on the verge of getting a divorce. And I was reading your reflection on your divorce and the scriptures about that and also about forgiveness. And for this whole time, I really thought it was him that was causing the whole issue with us. And I now realize it was me. And I just want to say thank you so much for putting this together. So I was just like, well, how'd you get my telephone number? Because, I mean, I was grateful. I was grateful and appreciative to hear about, like, how you get my telephone number? She said, no, so-and-so gave it to me. It was on your account. I'm like, okay. She said, but I just wanted to tell you that this really blessed me because we were going to divorce with me blaming him and thinking it was him. And now that I can see myself in this, I've been able to make changes, and it's completely turned our marriage around. And I was just like, wow, for that to be like the very first purchase, like one of the first 10 purchases. And this person calls me up and tells me that. I just said, God, I give you all the glory because, when he gave this to me to do, the first time I put it together, and I've learned this, I spoke to Broad Street's CEO about this. And I said to him, it's not just the will of God, it's also the way of God, and it's the time of God. And before all this, I had no thought to any of it. It was just enough trying to do the will of God. Okay, God, you want me to cross the street? Okay, yeah, I'm willing to cross the street. But to say, how do you want me to cross the street? It's not just going this way. He may say, I want you to go down the block and then cross the street. So, God, how do you want me to cross the street? And then when do you want me to do it? And when I first put the original layout together, it took 3 months. The Holy Spirit says, no, I didn't want it that way. I want you to do it this way. I was just like, huh? Couldn't you have like put some sirens, at the airport when the guy is standing there with it? Couldn't you have done something to let me know that you wanted a different ways? I wouldn't have wasted 3 months doing it. But I'm like, okay, that's on you, Jamie Marie,
Yeah.
because you were supposed to be in prayer throughout this entire time, asking
Yeah.
God to lead you, because this is not your work, it's his work.
Exactly.
So that was a word that came back to me from her. And there's been so many since, because now that we have a site, you can go right on our website and see all the different reviews that people put up there and the things that they were going through, and how this has caused them to get still and get intentional about engaging with the Father daily. As I try to share every time I speak to people, it's not just so much about the intentional journaling only, because the reality is that sometimes life hits you so hard in the teeth that you don't want to do anything. You don't want to pray. You don't want to write anything. You don't want to say anything. And I always try and get across to people that with God, it's simply about showing up. And when I say showing up, not just physically or not just in your posture, getting down on your knees, but the posture of your heart. Because even if you're in a place where you're just so broken and so down that you can't get out the bed, even right there, God can be right there with you in the bed as you open up your heart and say, God, I don't know what to do. I don't want to say nothing. I don't want to get up and do any type of worship and praise, but I need you to show me what to do. And I need you to help me and send me support and show me which steps to take next so I can have the courage. Because if I know if I'm still here, you have something for me. And I'm willing to do whatever you want, but right now I can't on my own. God can use that. So
Yeah.
my thing with folks is show it with that first. And then once you get that and you're able to get up, because even when you're feeling that way, eventually you got to get up and do something.
Yeah.
If you have a terminal illness, you got to decide, am I going to take medication or not? Am I going to get treatment or not? Eventually you're going to have to do something. So this resource that we've created is to help you start with doing something, to start with getting up every day, getting still before God, being intentional. When he gives you something, write it down. You don't need to understand it.
Yeah.
You don't need to know how.
Yeah.
Write it down, get intentional about what he's telling you to do, and then walk in that.
I love the way he affirmed the word to you,
Yeah.
because you're now listening to him. You've listened and you put it into action. And it's so great to see that. So to get the book, Affirm the Word, you can get your copy on Broad Street Publishing website
Mhm.
or Amazon. It's on there. And Jamie Marie, can you tell people, your website and the social media that you're on as well?
Sure. Our site is affirmtheword.org. That's our website. And all of our social media, which is Instagram and Facebook, is Affirm the Word Lit, Lit.
Wonderful. And what would you like to leave my audience with today?
My main thing again is just keep showing up with God. He desires every day to connect with you. He desires not just to meet with you and give you something, but he wants you to know who he is and what he's all about. So that when he leads you into a place, you'll know without a shadow of a doubt that he's going to show up and do what he's promised you he's going to do.
Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts on our conversation by putting your comments below, and visit thecallwithNancySabato.com to learn more about me and what we do here on the ministry. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Your support means so much to us.